What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to a live edition of the Ad Podcast today. This is not a normal show where I'm bringing you a thought leader or somebody from the marketing and advertising space to teach you guys something, although I think Nick's got the background and we should probably have him back for a future episode. But today's episode is about platforming stories of people out there in the community in Los Angeles that are trying to help, that are trying to give back and do good and help people affected by the fires. I put out a post on Tuesday, somewhat out of a just feeling of helplessness and, not really knowing what's going on and how to help and, where the impact could have the most amount of value. And I do know a few people who've been directly affected by the fires. I would say, kind of tangential acquaintances. Most of the people I know who are, friends of friends. So I didn't have any way of, bringing people down here to San Diego to stay with me or anything like that. I'm sure there's people in my network that have been affected. I just haven't heard from them personally yet. So, I've got this podcast. I've got, close to 31,000 followers on LinkedIn. I had a CES post the other day that got 80,000 views on it. So I thought, maybe this is a way that I can kind of, do some good. So Nick was the first person to reach out and let me know a little bit about his story and what he's been doing. I have a pretty big NGO CEO that's coming on probably next week. So stay tuned for that episode. I'll tease it out a little bit later when the details are firmed up. But anyways, Nick, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate you coming onto the show.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Appreciate you, setting this up and letting other people use your platform to talk about these things. So very cool of you to do.
Of course, man. Well, look, I can donate money. That's a great way to get involved, obviously. But I think, having a platform, especially when Los Angeles is so heavily focused on the advertising and the media industry, it just feels like this was a way that I could use my superpower to get involved, at least in the short term. So, yeah. Thank you, man. Nick, you and I actually met each other through the podcasting world. Mm-hmm. So you are a prolific drummer and musician. But also a media executive and a podcaster yourself, and you're a podcast producer. So we got connected to do some work together, and I've really loved getting to know you professionally over the past few months.
Likewise.
But thanks, man. So, when I put out this call to action, you were the first one to get back to me. So why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, your association to the Palisades and that community, the major area that's been impacted.
Sure.
And maybe, since you're only 3 miles away from everything going down, why don't you tell me a little bit about, last week when things really started kicking off?
Yeah. So, where to start? Just, a little bit about myself, like you were saying. I'm a producer. I own a podcast production company, and then I also own a full service production company. Where we do, commercial shoots and TV and film and documentaries and things like that. And being in the LA area, that's the community that I'm in. But I've always been just drawn to just a sense of community, sort of everything that I've ever done, whether I grew up in the restaurant business or starting a band and trying to get people to come to our show, or starting a podcast and trying to grow an audience, or making great content or documentaries and stuff through my production company. For me, it's always been about fostering human connection, and everything is about community. And I love all the stuff that's happening with AI. So I'm not gonna be like this curmudgeon-y old man that's like, yelling at the clouds. But I also think that we're starting to lose this sense of community. And particularly I don't know why, but over the last like 6 to 8 months, I've really been focused on that sense of community and, how can I serve my community better? How can I do more in-person things? I think you and I talked a little bit about that as well. So, once when the fire broke out, it was Tuesday morning. My wife was in Santa Monica. I sent her a text and I said, hey, just so you know, there's the PCH is closed. There's a big fire in the Palisades, and she was like, and then she sent me uh, images of her, and I can send them to you. But she's in Santa Monica,
Yeah.
and the whole hill is on fire up in the Palisades.
Wow. That's
And she was
crazy.
like, because she was at a work thing, but they were on the top floor of this hotel. So she went around the corner and she could see the fire and everything. So, and I just wanted to let her know, this is what's going on. So, and it's eerie now, but she's sending me text messages. And she's like, this thing is really spreading really quickly, and she was sort of watching it unfold in real time. Um, but as it started to come out that it was ripping through the Palisades, that's a place that is near and dear to my heart. I mean, I play there, I work there. I don't live there, but I feel like I do. I cycling. I go up there. I'm probably up there 3 to 4 times a week. We go up to the Palisades Village with my daughter and walk around. I'm into real estate, so like that Palisades Village that Rick Caruso owns is like one of my favorite places.
Mm,
We just I've always felt very connected to that community for one reason or another. It's hard not to. It's a beautiful community. But yeah, it's close. It's 2.5, 3 miles from my house. So that's where, like I said, that's where we sort of live, work, and play. Um, and Wednesday morning, I think both my wife and I were both feeling kind of restless and saying, what can we do? It's frustrating to watch. We weren't getting evacuated. We were sort of right on the cusp of being evacuated. And she said, you know what? I'm just going to go out, and I'm seeing online that people need some necessities for people who've been displaced. So I'm going to run to Target and grab a couple things and drop them off at the YMCA. Do you want to do the same? Or do you want to go with me? I said, sure. I said, why don't we post something on Instagram or on social and see if anyone else wants to contribute to the cause. So I posted something. My wife posted something. We're getting ready. We're in the car. My buddy Cam calls me and he goes, hey man, I want to, contribute, or can I go shopping with you guys as well? Between the time we left my house and by the time we were going to go to Target, we ended up going to Costco. By the time we got to Costco, we'd raised like $1,000. And
wow. Just
while
that
we were
drive.
walking around, he's like, I got another 500. Because he posted about it too. So, and then I was like, I got 500. My wife's like, I got 200. And it happened pretty quickly. And I think within 48 hours, we had raised $10,000. And
Wow.
now we're above $20,000. And one of the things, for better or for worse, for right or for wrong, the one thing for me was that I don't necessarily like donating to big charity organizations because I don't
Sure.
know how much of that money is going to relief. So
Yep.
I was like, I would rather know that we're going to raise this money. I'm going to go and physically buy supplies. I'm going to physically drop them off. I'm going to physically see people in need picking them up, and then also we can work with them on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute basis to say, hey, what do you guys need now? What do you guys, so they're constantly updating that list. So when we're going and making shopping runs, we know that earlier in the morning they really needed baby wipes, but by the afternoon, because they put a post out about it, they've gotten inundated with baby wipes, and they're like, no one's bringing us razors and toothpaste and stuff like that. So we're saying,
Hmm.
okay, we'll go, and we're literally dropping off like truckloads of supplies to these places at this point. Um,
That's awesome.
and from that, we reached out to World Central Kitchen, run by Chef Jose Andres. And so I don't know if you know much about them, but WCK provides meals to first responders, victims, and things like that, essentially immediately. Like
Wow.
it blows my mind how quickly they activate and can get on the scene, and they use local volunteers, they use local restaurants. Sometimes they build kitchens, sometimes they don't. So we started working with him, or with that organization. So we've been delivering meals with WCK, driving around, wherever it's needed, and then raising these funds, and then going and buying supplies for people in need. And have been fortunate enough to be able to send some money to friends of ours who've lost everything.
Mm,
Clients, a
mm.
client of mine lost everything. Her like escaped with nothing but the clothes on her back. She's a 3-week-old baby, um, and lost everything. Other friends of ours, completely homes decimated. They had nothing, because they had to get out. They had to get out so quickly. So It's been great to see just the outpouring of support and love for people in LA. And a lot of it is like friends of mine back east, because I grew up on the East Coast, that are saying, I wish there was more that I could do. I wish I could come out and help, but here's some money to go and at least buy some supplies. So it's been, it's, it's really, it's been like very emotional to see the outpouring of support that's going on. So that's what
Yeah, no,
we're up
I
to.
love that, man. I love it. Well, look, I think you brought up a really good point, and I think it's an important one for all of us to think about. Like this, there's this idea. I was just talking to an author yesterday of this. You're on this plateau of indifference, right? When you're like dealing with like marketing messages, or unfortunately, disasters become marketing messages from NGOs and nonprofits and groups that raise money. And I agree with you. Sometimes as a consumer, in this circumstance where you want to do good, you want to give back, you want to have an impact, but you feel like, okay, well, how does my $50 donation, make an impact in a situation that's so massive? We're hearing now that this will be the largest and most expensive natural disaster in the history of America, essentially. And then there's also this like horrible news situation where there's like, oh, like these are rich people, these are people that live in LA.
Yeah.
And look, like Palisades is a great area, 100%. There's a lot of rich people that live in Malibu in those areas, but all the people that live in Altadena aren't rich. I mean, I lived in
Yeah.
the Valley. I lived in the Valley specifically in my 20s because I wasn't rich. I bought
Right.
my first house in Burbank because I couldn't afford to be on the side of town where those places were less expensive. So,
Yeah. And let's
I
be
think,
clear too, like,
yeah,
sorry to
go.
interrupt you, but like not
Mhm.
every, just because you live in Malibu or the Palisades does not mean you're rich either. Right. There's not, I mean, there's people who live in guest homes. There's people who work for people who may be rich, but they were in a guest home next to their house and that was destroyed too. But let's talk about the ancillary effects of this too. I was watching an interview with someone and I forget who it was, but he said, look, I lost everything. I lost my house, my car, he said, I'll be fine. He said, the person I'm worried about is my landscaper who does every house on this
Mm,
block and just lost an entire book of business. I think that I don't think anyone's crying for the rich getting their homes, but I mean, from a monetary perspective, right?
mhm.
Obviously, it's devastating to lose your house. I don't care how rich you are, and I don't care, how much people want to come down on you for the amount of money you have. It's still devastating. You have memories there. These are human beings too, right?
Yeah.
But the money that we're raising is not going to rich people. The money, the
Mhm.
aid that the rich people aren't going down to the YMCA to get toothpaste.
Yeah.
It's the people who have been
100%.
displaced that have nowhere to turn. They have no family. They have no money. They have, some people are living paycheck to paycheck. Some people are well below the poverty line. There's also all the people who worked at all of those small business. I mean, I'm a small business owner myself. I've been a small business owner. My family's been small, but like I understand the economics of it. If you own a small business, even if it's in the Palisades or in Malibu, it doesn't mean you're rolling in it, right? A lot of these people are barely keeping their businesses afloat, and they've just burned down. Their employees have lost their jobs. All the people who work in the grocery store there's two grocery stores there. All those employees no longer have a job for right now, at least, right? There's the gas stations. There's so many things outside of just the multi-million dollar mansions that burnt down, and people are like, well, they can just go to their second home or their third home. That's not who we're talking about. I think that's a naive and narrow-minded way of looking at this. And to your point, there's the whole other side of this too, which is Altadena and the Eaton fire was devastating as well. So like, yeah, it's not just rich people who are who can just go to their other house in Tuscany or something.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of people also don't recognize or aren't aware of the fact that California homeownership, especially sometimes in some of these areas that are considered historically wealthy or are expensive, they're generational homes. like I have a friend, Keith, who had a house at the top of Bel Air with an amazing view. The home is probably worth $10 million. It's got an amazing view, but their grandfather built that house in 1910, and they've passed it down through the generations. You know,
Right.
they own a dentist tool repair shop in Burbank. They're blue collar folks. And yes, they have this amazing, house that has been passed down, and it's a family asset. And, they don't have to, they can pass it down and not have to have the tax basis of the property insurance. So that's one of the reasons some of these houses stay in the family and they don't get sold to, people coming in, is because of the tax code, and they're able to keep it within a family. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to reiterate that idea, like, whether it's like you said, the guest houses, or like, I've also known of families where three or four, households will come together, buy a big estate with, two or three units on it, and live together as a
Yeah.
family. Like, there's a lot of different situations. So
Yeah.
I think the
I mean,
most
there's also
most
the mobile home park that's on
oh
PCH.
yeah,
So
totally.
there's like, but go ahead. I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, I think yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that, because there's always this narrative out there, or I've seen. I don't think it's is a permeating narrative, but occasionally you see these narratives that, like, oh, these are rich people, like, why should we care? And I want to just dispel that for anybody who's tuning in from not in the area, that doesn't know, like, the landscape.
Agreed. I'm not
So
I'm not anti, like, if you want to go out and make a ton of money, that's on you. But like, I'm not going to raise money for rich people.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So,
So let's dive back into something that you were talking about, which I think is, impact, right? Like, this is a big thing that's been going on in the philanthropic space for a long time. There are these scandals that come out that, NGO XYZ spends 95% of their budget on operations and marketing, and only 5% of it actually gets down to the quote unquote end user, or the person that NGO or nonprofit is supposed to benefit. So I think that does create a lot of skepticism, and sometimes confusion, where people are like,
mhm.
I don't know where to donate because I just don't know what the impact is going to be.
Yeah.
So I love this idea that, you are almost going like direct to consumer, in a way, right? With the stuff that you've been doing, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're not
And I'm a
working with it.
hands-on guy. Like, that's my
Yeah.
deal. I like that, like, no matter what it is. And so I'm not big on just like passively doing something. So I'm like, I want to go out and physically do, okay, you want to send money? That's great. I'll go out and physically purchase the stuff, or or work with the local community and figure out what's needed. I like, that's just sort of who I am as a person, for better or worse. So, um,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I think it's a great thing, man. I mean, look, not everybody has the time or the know-how. I mean, like, I'll raise my hand and say I was not jumping in my car driving to LA and trying to figure out how to do stuff on the ground. One, because I don't live in that community anymore. I lived there for 10 years. I work there. I visit all the time, but I felt like I'd be more of a distraction than, or I would get in the way because I wouldn't know what to do. So that's why I
I
chose
don't
to do
disagree with that. I don't
podcasts.
disagree
Yeah.
with that. It's like one more body that has to sleep somewhere, and
Yeah.
and um yeah, I mean, if I lived here, like, we're in an Airbnb now in Newport. Like, if I lived here, I probably wouldn't have driven, I wouldn't have driven up to LA. I probably would have found someone in LA and said, "Hey,
Hmm.
let me try to donate some money to you," and let them do what they were doing. But yeah, I I think that there are many ways to contribute or help, or it doesn't necessarily mean you have to get in your car and try to be a hero, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, it's kind of like, there was that controversy around the wildfires in Lahaina in Maui, a while back, where, some people were saying, like, stay out, like, make room for locals and first responders. And we don't want tourists on the island, even if they're on, like, the other side of the island that has no impact, because, you're just sucking up emergency services and bandwidth. But, that kind of mentality stuck around for a while. And I know people who operate businesses in Maui and Lahaina and that part of the world who say, tourism, which is a huge revenue generator, not just for Hawaii more so than Los Angeles, but Los Angeles is a huge tourist destination as well.
Yeah.
So I think we also want to be, we also want to keep that messaging out there that, once these fires are contained, we're going to rebuild. LA is open for business. We want people to continue to come to LA and enjoy all the other neighborhoods, all the other things that are of value, because that it's usually, like you said, it's small businesses that are impacted the worst and first when there's a drop in tourism dollars.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And I mean, LA is it's such a magical city, man. Like I remember the first time I ever came to LA, like I landed at LAX and walked out of the airport, and I don't know what it was. There was just something in the air, right? Smog, I guess. I don't know, but I was just like, I belong here. I fell in love with the city as soon, and it had nothing to do with the weather. Obviously, the weather is a plus, but it just lit me up. And I was coming from, I lived, I was born and raised in Philadelphia. I lived in the New York City area. So I've been to like major cities and things like that. But I don't know. I just got here and it has its fair share of problems like any other city. But it's just a magical city, man. And as you know, like each different neighborhood has a different vibe, has a different, has a different set of people who live there and culture and activities and things like that. It's just, you can find everything that you want in LA, and I hope people do keep coming and keep visiting and spending tourism dollars here to help rebuild, because I mean, I don't know I have no idea how to even estimate this, and I'm the wrong guy to try to do it, but I mean, we're looking at least a decade, right? Like at least, maybe more,
Yeah,
maybe
gotta
more.
be. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, especially with like the planning regulations, like a lot of these houses probably won't even be able to be built again because of, insurance costs, or, zoning restrictions have changed and things that
and
were
they were grandfathered
grandfathered
in.
in or no
Yeah.
longer allowed. So yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure.
It has
So,
definitely changed.
yeah,
It's
go ahead.
definitely going to change the entire landscape of how that area looks. PCH up and through the Palisades, all through Malibu. Like it'll be completely different than it ever was, for
Yeah.
sure.
So, what I love about what you've been doing as well is you've been getting involved with local NGOs versus kind of the larger ones. So, you talked about the local YMCA. You talked about this organization that is getting food to the firefighters and the first responders that are on the front lines. I think you also promoted an organization that's helping moms that I saw on some of your social media posts. So I
Yeah,
love
baby
this
to
idea
baby.
that, yeah, like you've already gone out there and vetted NGOs that are having like a huge impact on the ground. You're going out there and purchasing supplies for them directly. So I love that. I think that's a great direct consumer way to get involved. So for those of the followers for the show who are kind of in the same shoes as I am, they're not in LA, they're down in San Diego, they're on the East Coast, they're maybe even in somewhere else in the world, but they've got friends in LA, or they just feel compelled to get involved and do something. How do people watching today get involved with what you're doing?
Mhm.
And why don't we just start with that? Why don't we just start with that call to action? What would you appeal to the viewers that are on today on how they could get involved and support you or support other
Sure.
organizations that are doing good work?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to help what we're doing directly, I was telling you before we went live that I'm just accepting the money through Venmo. I legitimately thought that when I posted something on social, I was going to get $200, maybe $300, right? So, and I would have never told people to just Venmo me directly, because now I have people who I've never met before. I have no idea who they are, putting their faith in me and Venmoing me money, right? But we've raised over $20,000 now. I think we're at 23, including like
Wow.
new clothing donations and things like that. So if you feel comfortable with donating directly to me, we would love that. It's Venmo. It's just at Nick dash Ruffini, and Dylan, I'll give you the link for it if you want to throw it in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll drop it in the show notes.
And yeah, we're not some big organization. We're taking literally, if you give me $100, I'm going to take the $100, go to the store, buy $100 worth of supplies, and drop it off at the local
Yeah,
YMCA.
you might have some problems with your tax return this year.
I was thinking about that, and I'm like, hopefully my accountant can figure that one out. I don't know. Because like I said, I literally thought it was going to be like, $200, and I wasn't going to have to worry about it. So, yeah, so you can feel free to do that. And I get it. There's scammers out there, and there's people that are
some
saying
shady stuff going on.
So like, if you don't feel comfortable with that because you've never met me, that's totally fine. I would give to World Central Kitchen, WCK, which is Chef Andreas. And he owns a bunch of restaurants. He's a world-renowned chef, and they mobilized. I mean, I think that they were in the Palisades within like 22 hours or something like that. Like,
wow.
They're serving people hot meals, fresh meals every day. They work with local restaurants. They work with local volunteers, and then they mobilize a team to come in and sort of manage everything. But it's an amazing organization that is serving up meals. And if you're in the LA area, just look at there's 2 YMCA's that are serving as drop-off and distribution points. So there's Collins and Katz, Collins, and Katz, Katz, in West LA. And the other one is the Westchester YMCA, kind of near the airport, near LAX. And so they're accepting donations. Check with them first. They don't want clothes. Everyone brought clothes, so they have too many clothes. But they want toiletries, baby supplies. But they update their list every day, so they're always posting about it on Instagram, so you can see what they're in need of. I would start there, or if you know someone in LA who's kind of doing, because I'm not the only person who's doing this. We're not the only people who are doing this. So if there's someone else that you know and you trust them to go and do this, then send them some money and they can go purchase some supplies. The one thing you had mentioned earlier, and we were both kind of talking about, you don't know where your dollars are going if you're donating to some of these bigger organizations. Coincidentally, after this happened, or while this has been happening, I've been seriously considering starting a charity of some sort that can deliver necessities immediately, like inspired by World Central Kitchen, but maybe doing it on the other side where we're getting necessities to people, like toothbrush and toothpaste and all these other things. And I was driving down to Newport and I was listening to a podcast, and just the next one had just auto loaded and came on, and it was the guy who started Charity Water. So he talks about the whole reason why he started the charity, how he started the charity, and I'm sort of like, I wasn't, but I'm like, I'm taking mental notes while I'm driving, but I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But one of the things that he does that I think is really cool is 100% of your donation goes to direct aid. And the way that he does that is they have set up 2 bank accounts. They have one bank account that is for overhead, and he goes out and raises money through organizations, wealthy donors, all of that, to just fund their overhead, so that the public, any dollar amount that they donate goes directly towards aid. And they get audits every year to show exactly the money in and money out. And now they have it so they're so advanced now that you can actually, when you donate, you can track your dollar all the way to like the well that you bought in Ghana or somewhere. It's really amazing. But I think that the reason why I brought that up, and I think it's a great model to say, look, we'll get our operational budget from somewhere else. And if you're donating to this, you can know that 100% of your donation is going to aid, which I think is a really cool thing.
Yeah, no, I love that model. I feel like that's the types of charities that are disrupting the old marketing and overhead, and you don't know, it seems like a black box. Nick, obviously know you, so I would have no problem Venmoing you my donation. But for those who are listening that maybe are like, oh man, I don't know this guy, just because Dylan is having him on his show, that's not enough for me. So one thing I do love about Venmo is it's public, right? There is a ledger, so to speak.
Yeah.
So will you commit to having your donation ledger public and like having some level of transparency on how the funds are used? That way people can feel confident that if they
Yeah.
send you money, they also know.
It's interesting. We've every time we do a run, we're posting pictures of it and we're saying, here's all the stuff that we bought and everything.
That's
And
perfect.
but I think we're not posting it so that because we want to show people. We're posting it because we're like, if you donated money, we want to show you that we're
Yeah,
actually
it's the receipts essentially, right?
exactly right. And,
Yeah.
funny enough, we were out and we stopped and grabbed something to eat, right? And I was like, see, if we were the Red Cross, like donations would be paying for this meal right now. Right. And I'm
Yeah.
not poo-pooing on the Red Cross. I'm just saying, any
Right.
organization
Just an example. Just an
just an
example.
example, but I'm like, but we paid for our meal, right? Where I'm like, I'm not using
Yeah.
the funds to pay for gas or to pay for meals or anything like that. But I think I got to figure out a way. But what I would like to do is take, I would have all of our receipts, and I got to take pictures of them and show exactly what we're doing. And funny enough, I have the ledger right here. So
Nice.
the total contributions $21,151.11.
Wow.
And so far we've spent $12,345.69. So we still have some money left over in the kitty. Unfortunately, so it's me, my wife, and a buddy of mine. His name's Cam Smith. So my wife and I are down here now. We left LA. We're in Newport, and then my buddy Cam got COVID. So we haven't been doing any runs for the last couple of days. But the three of us talked about it. What happens inevitably is a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, people move on with their lives.
Yeah.
And people stop being worried about it. The news stops covering it as much, and then they're still going to need aid, which I feel good about that we still have some money left over. So I'm like, let everyone keep donating. Let everyone keep donating to us, but let everyone keep bringing supplies. Let everyone keep dropping the stuff off. And in a week or 2 weeks, when they still need all of these things and they're getting less and less donations, then we can come in and say, hey, look, we have funds that we can continue to, like, this is my community. I'm not going anywhere. Right. So this is going to be an ongoing effort. And then there's the rebuild. I don't know what that looks like either. If it's Habitat for Humanity or if it's donating time to go and help rebuild. I don't know. I have no idea what that's going to look like, but I keep thinking that soon, not to sound callous, but like soon everyone's going to forget and move on.
Yeah, it's sad that it happened. It seemed to happen with Lahaina. That story had a short shelf life. For some reason, this feels bigger. This feels like a tipping point moment. I don't know, sadly, because maybe it's because it's Los Angeles and it's people who have means and have, big megaphones and big voices. Like, I feel like it's not just going to get swept under the rug, and it's not going to be, a fast news cycle. This is a story that's going to be around for a while. So,
yeah.
Well, hey, dude, I'm looking at the number on the stream, and this is the biggest number of live tune-ins we've ever had. So
it's amazing.
I am, yeah, I'm stoked for everybody that's listening. I'm stoked that you guys, care about this issue. I'm not going to give my normal plug for the show. You guys know where to find us. You know how to find future episodes, etc. What I would ask you to do, if you're at home today and you're watching this and you felt, inspired by my conversation with Nick, or you felt like you wanted to do something, but you didn't really know how and where to have an impact, like, look at these organizations that Nick has outlined. Consider even participating in Nick's direct campaign, because he knows people and he's got a direct line into these charities that are doing frontline work. He's been transparent on the show. He's given you the receipts and he's willing to be transparent. So you don't have to worry about that. I can definitely vouch for him. But hey, look, if you can't donate, if that's not a position that you're in today, all you have to do is hit the button on share this episode, repost it to your LinkedIn channel or wherever you happen to be watching today. let's get some juice behind this thing, and let's get some money for Nick and the organizations that he's talking about. I'm going to repost all of them in the show notes.
Great.
And then also, like I mentioned, I've got another episode coming up next week that needs to get firmed up, but I think it's going to be impactful. And same thing, if there is somebody who you know that's been impacted, that wouldn't be embarrassed if you were to tag them in the comments, or if you want to DM me privately and tell me about somebody that you know has been impacted and has a real need, I'd be glad to pass any of those communications on to Nick, because he's still out there doing the Lord's work. So that being said, man, Nick, I knew I liked you when I first met you. I like you even more now.
Likewise. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I wanted to touch on one thing where you were saying,
please.
If there is someone that you know that's been directly impacted, we've been doing that. We've been sending gift cards to people that we know have been impacted. We've been sending it to them directly, or making sure that they're getting supplies. And to your point, it's a little, it's embarrassing to go and say, hey, look, I need help, but like, people are really in need. So if there is someone, you don't have to publicly do it, but send Dylan a message. I'm on all the social medias. Just, Nick Ruffini is a pretty uncommon name, so you can find me pretty easily. And we'll be happy to send them something, or send them a gift card, or cash, or supplies, whatever is needed. So that's a great way to directly impact someone that you know.
Yeah, no, I love that. All right, man. Hey, appreciate you. I know you're down in Newport now, but when you get back to LA, stay safe. I know the conditions are continually changing. I know there was a bit of a scare, that things were going to flare up or maybe pop up in some other areas. So for everybody out there, stay safe, and we'll be continuing to bring you guests on this topic throughout the coming days and weeks. So thanks so much, everyone.
Dylan, thanks again.
Cheers.